Warning, the following video has flashing lights and also includes content that may be deemed inappropriate for some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. Brian Barber, aka Bigfoot's Barbershop. I see again. You have decided to find your way into the Fox Den for another episode of Midnight Lycanthropy here on LordeStarfox Radio. Yet, please allow me to feed. Absolutely delicious. I do appreciate you bringing me gifts and offerings and allowing me to replenish my lost power source. Without further ado, it is time for Bigfoot's Barbershop and myself to take a walk into the madness.
Stood up. I said, oh my god, it's a werewolf. And everybody in the car freaked out.
My creatures of the night. Once again, you are tuning in to Midnight Lycanthropy on LordeStarfox Radio. We have Bigfoot's Barbershop, a weekly host who has already found his way into the Fox Den and is pumping up the late night fire as we again are going to burn the timber into the early hours of the morning. And Mr. Barber, my friend, do you want to make a contract with me?
I want to read this contract to know what level I'm getting into, because am I donating a pint a month to feed you because just to hang out, or what are we doing here? So things are going good though. Doing a couple projects I don't know if I can talk about yet, so I'm not going to because I don't want to jeopardize them. But good stuff is heading up. There's going to be some good content coming out. The snow's gone, so I'll be back out in the woods very soon.
Boom. Yes, great stuff. And I love the sense of humor right there. And to the audience, a group of individuals that do roll with the Midnight Society who are absolutely legendary. Well, everyone in our group is legendary, so you're probably going to have a hard little project figuring out even who I'm leaving a breadcrumb for. Yet this is going to be pretty epic, some of the stuff Mr. Barber will have on the horizon. We will definitely be touching base on it here as well. What else you been up to, man?
Just trying to get everything together with those projects happening. And as weird as it sounds, I had promised a 13-year-old boy last year, as long as I was healthy, we were going to do the Comic-Con contest, and I was going to do the Old Man Logan. So trying to get in shape for that because his mom started making the costumes, so now I'm committed.
That's pretty exciting. What are you going to roll as, Wolverine?
Yeah, Old Man Logan, jeans and the little scruffier hair and beard. But I got to be able to pull off that, I should have said white tank top.
That's pretty gnarly stuff right there. I mean, you could always go as one of the members of the good old Howling wolf pack, eh?
Yeah, grow the beard out a little more. Don't shave body hair. I'll be good.
That's hilarious. And actually, that makes me want to make a funny and sarcastic complaint. I think my Tubi is broke, meaning I go log in the other day and obviously for convenience, of course, I just gave them my email so I get blown up by spam or whatever, but I can save my things I'm watching. Yet for recommendations, I had a Grandma Werewolf or Strippers versus Werewolves. I think it's broken. What is happening?
Where would those movies even come from?
How does, yes, you
How do
just
you get
asked.
recommended strippers versus werewolves?
First off, like you said, I mean, I spent some time acting, and everything costs money. Unless you have found a group of people that are your friends, that you're not paying any of them, you're still spending your own gas money, etc., time, food. These things cost money. And a lot of these movies up on Tubi, holy Christmas trees. Where or how does any of this even come to play? And some of them look like they were filmed on a potato back when I was in high school, too.
It blows my mind. People's like strippers versus werewolves. I mean, what's next? Bimbos versus Bigfoot?
I really don't even understand how it just comes to play. I've seen some pretty cool stuff on there, yet 90% of it is just, especially in the horror and sci-fi section, which I like creature features. Of course, I'm scanning those areas, are just straight up Looney Tune material. I just don't get it.
I don't either. You know, next in your subscription is going to be, you know, pole dancer versus pigman or something.
Speaking of Pigman, there's a new movie on there of a pig man. Literally, he's been combined and he's just haunting the forest. And the AI just looks so bad. I couldn't take it serious before, but then when you see the AI, you really can't take it serious.
Sounds like something out of South Park.
Like when they did Snooki.
Or Barbara Streisand is Mecca Streisand.
That's, I just can't even take it serious, and I don't even know if I'm supposed to. But like I said, somebody is obviously paying Tubi to put up their content. It's like your buddy, you know, that Dogman 1 and 2. Those are so bad.
Yeah. Once in a while, they surprise you, though. I gotta admit, I sat down and watched that Man versus Bigfoot, and basically, to sum it up, it's basically the first Predator movie, but with about $100 budget for the
Yeah, I've seen that.
special effects.
That's a good one, man.
So I was surprised at how good it actually was.
There's a few of them on there I'll send you. Like I said, I've seen probably all of them, but I think there's a couple you'll like for sure, and I know there's some ones that YouTube have up there as well that are pretty solid. It's just funny though, because it all does take time and money, but that leads into something that I believe is pretty quality. I've always been dubbed and put into this category anyhow, which is why with Starfox, I use the True Blood type Alucard from Hellsing personification. Growing up, all the girlfriends I would have or models that I'd be shooting with would always be like, "Oh my goodness, you look like a Twilight or a True Blood character." All right, cool. You know, so I started checking it out, and I was like, yo, you know, besides the super random hooking up that comes out of nowhere, which seems to be a theme in a lot of these shows this day and age, which is just bizarre. Besides that, it's awesome. It's got werewolves, vampires, skinwalkers, fairies, shapeshifters, all kinds of gnarly, awesome stuff. But then, like I said, randomly, people just start like hooking up, and they just show you it all the time. I have seen way too much things that I didn't necessarily want to see. Or I can't really go into full detail, but here's a quick one for you. One of the main characters, Sookie, is running to find Bill. Bill is sleeping in a graveyard for some reason, rises up out of the grave, grabs Sookie, who's being chased by, they don't really necessarily tell you, pulls her into the grave, and then they just start hooking up. So you're like, wait a second, what just happened to her running for her life and these things from behind? And oh, okay, this is where Bill's been. He's just been in a graveyard, sleeping underneath dirt. Like, what? So it's definitely got that new age lack of filtering, meaning you just see a whole lot of crazy hooking up, meaning, well, that's why it's called TV mature rating. I just feel like it's kind of, in my opinion, unneeded. I personally am watching it for vampires, werewolves, and that type of stuff. Same thing with like Spartacus when I used to watch that. I'm watching that for gladiators and that type of action. Yet again, they just had all these random scenes of people just hooking up all the time, and it's just so bizarre. That's pretty much my only beef with it. Yet it's down in good old Louisiana, and I feel like we haven't really covered too much of Louisiana. And I thought it would be pretty cool to touch base on a couple of encounters I have from that area, meaning True Blood does a really good job actually showing you the environment of how Louisiana would look. Same thing with if people watch Swamp People in the bayou and stuff. It's way different than being out on the West Coast or up north here or in your area, the Great Lakes. It's way different than that. The trees, just the setup, everything. And True Blood does so great with that authentic type feel to have like these strange encounters. I just found it to be pretty interesting. What do you think about all that, eh?
Yeah, Louisiana's got some, I know we've talked about it a couple times. It's kind of like its own little microcosmos because of the different religions and, voodoo and the whole nine yards there. And, some of those homes and towns are just amazing, as far as the architecture and all the stuff that happened and all the talk about the, you know, voodoo practices, you had witchcraft practices down there. So all this culmination of all that energy's got to lead to something, along with a whole hotbed of, you know, Rougarou, if I pronounce that right, with the Dogman and even some swamp apes scattered in there. Seems like Dogman's a lot more prevalent in Louisiana, though.
Excellent stuff right there. Yes, there's a couple different terms. I believe the most prevalent, though, are the Loup-garou and the Rougarou. We've covered that here a few times because it's pretty well known. Yet these were encounters that I feel definitely fall more into the Dogman. I don't think it per se is involved with voodoo and black magic, but I don't know. I do know when you hit New Orleans and some of those other areas, it's pretty prevalent. And I also saw some guy on YouTube that claimed he was down in deep vampire country when he was driving around recording, and it looked pretty interesting, meaning I don't think I would be stomping around in there. I mean, I've spent enough time down in Boston growing up in the good old city, yet you always have buildings and people around and things. Not that it makes you any safer, it just gives you that feeling of being safe, right? Meaning, hey, all right, if something happens, hopefully you yell out for help, somebody comes up. But where he was legit countryside with all these rundown, boarded up houses. It's like, yo, dude, if something does happen to you when you yell for help, I don't think anybody's coming, man.
Yeah, or the people that do live there might just want what you got on you and leave you to your demise anyway. Depending on how deep you are, you get those people that are living off the grid and hardcore, maybe even living out of one of those boarded houses. Sketchy.
Yeah, you say that again. And I do know that this is, again, just my opinion. I'm very science-based. I know there's a lot of individuals out there that do think they are vampires and that type of stuff really does exist. Again, logical and science-based. I do know you have to have a very adapted set of digestive organs that could handle that, meaning you can't just consume blood without causing massive trauma to your own digestive system. I'm not going to go into depth with it, but that's why vampire bats are especially adapted, meaning if you look at their digestive system, it's able to handle large amounts of iron, other metallic aspects, So I don't see how, if we're going to go by what a vampire is, and you look it up, something that is a creature of the night that feeds on blood, right? Or a little bit more might be involved, like draining yourself, etc., with your, I don't know, aura. But again, I don't buy into personally vampires that, like I said, on True Blood and things being able to exist. It just doesn't seem to fall into anything that would bring any sort of merit. Yeah, how do you feel about that before we start diving into some of these strange topics?
I think you're right as far as the scientific portion of the digestion and everything like that. What's scary to me is, let's just take that part out, but you got people who are still convinced of that lifestyle. They don't live by our rules or, mentality of life is sacred and everything like that. So if you're out in the, deep woods and happen to bump into one, you're not going to reason your way out of something, because their mentality is that's how it works, in my opinion. I'm
Mm-hmm.
just guessing, but even if they can't technically drink your life fluid, they could still take it away from you. And
Mm-hmm. Yes. No, that is a very valid point as well. I do agree with that. I guess I was just trying to make a little bit more of a broader reference of meaning stakes, creatures
right.
super fast, like meaning this person can just shadow step to us like they're Johnny Cage or something.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't buy into that either. I don't think people can tap into that. Maybe
Yes.
you get some adrenalized strength, from the adrenaline. The adrenaline's a real thing, but as
Mm-hmm.
far as that adrenaline pushing you to, basically teleport 50 feet now.
Yes, that's all. Is I understand for sure if people, really think that or do convince themselves to that aspect. I just, as stated, was saying, nobody is being, even though this movie was pretty terrible, I was a fan of Jared Leto. I heard some stuff about him, though, that also doesn't make me necessarily think he's the nicest individual either. Yet, in Morbius, right, with Jared Leto, and I don't think people just turn into these bats and have all these bats around them and can just literally look out on the city and all of a sudden have sonar, everything's pulsating, and then you can just jump off a 30-story building, literally just run to the next and things. Again, I have an open mind, and if science or people that I value their opinions could show me any sort of evidence to support that, I would love to hear it. Yet even when those people, remember that History Channel show, Superhumans or something, I believe it was,
Yeah.
or yeah, even those people that had some pretty cool, I guess you could call them abilities, still weren't doing any of that stuff.
No, and like we've talked on scientific wise, as far as like even the werewolf transformation would be brutal. Now imagine trying to shrink down a 6 foot human trying to shrink into a bat. you know.
Right? That's what I'm saying. It would fully have to be something supernatural, meaning there could be no sort of people claiming it. All right, you would legit be a creature of the night that had no sort of ties to humanity, because that would be magic, like you said. Obviously, if you're magical, then you're not going to feel any sort of the side effects.
Right.
Yes. Well, since we are going to the Bayou area, Louisiana, I will not be saying Louisiana every time because we are going to be down there. It is time to get a little bit of some gnarly stuff out there. We have 1957, Lake Charles. A group of men are hunting in the good old bayou when they come upon a strange, jet black, shaggy, human like canine creature with what seemed to be glowing red eyes, sitting on a tree branch 20 or so yards away, consuming what looked to be a young woman. Raising their guns in terror and firing at this animal, it began to make laughing sounds while it licked its lips and began devouring the woman again. Thinking it must be some sort of unholy creature, the men ran off to find a larger group to help deal with the Sure. Later in the day, once returning to the scene, the woman's thigh bone was found jammed into a tree. Her skin was also found hanging, and her head was found untouched, turned towards what was left of her remains, as if to see what had happened to her. After vomiting everywhere, the man and his crew ran off in fear back to where they had come from. What do you think about that, man?
When you were first talking about it, I think, okay, maybe it was a big boar, or maybe falling into the were hyena that you have come up with. But now to hear that something put a bone in a tree and basically
Yeah.
it sounds like skinned her, that takes it to a whole nother level where I'm not quite sure how to make that work scientifically.
Yeah,
I mean, what's your opinion on it?
I'm with you on that, my friend. It's very bizarre. That seemingly shows something that has intellect per se and an understanding of what it was doing. I don't really know. Could that be a skinwalker or such? Sure, but then from everyone I have spoke to, again, he or she that is on all fours and never speaks of them becoming raging werewolves. Okay? A skinwalker is much different than a werewolf. I don't see how a skinwalker, because it would just be a larger wolf, they don't get hands and things. They just become a larger version that has some attributes that have been added to it. How is this thing sitting up in the tree, per se, like a squirrel or something, just eating a person with its hand just holding it? Something that is canine based would not be able to perch itself up in a tree like that.
No, sounds more like something a baboon would do or something.
Mm-hmm. It 100%, because a baboon, again, yes, could sit up there because it's got the feet like that, where it could just perch itself up there and hang out. And like I had said, skinwalkers, if you look it up, they don't just have hands and they don't become a werewolf and things. They're a larger bear, a larger wolf, etc. Massive bear could obviously climb the tree, but bears don't really sit on their haunches and use their hands to eat too much. I mean, they might put their paw up to their face, but they're usually just ripping off chunks with their face, correct?
Right. And they're sure not going to do it in a tree. They might hide it in a tree and come back, but they don't eat it in a tree.
I'm with you, my friend. That again also seems like something baboons do because baboons use their hands a lot, per se, like we do, but so do raccoons and such as well. Really interesting because it has to have some sort of articulated hands. Again, you have a group of people per se that saw this. Yeah, this is a long dang time ago. You and I were not able to speak to any of these people directly, so it is per se hearsay that has been passed down. Doesn't mean it didn't occur, but we all know how over time things change, meaning stories change as they're passed down. Certain details might be left out or added or changed a little bit, not even on purpose. Meaning, fast forward to now, who knows if what we just spoke about is 100% everything they saw, you know?
Right. Like you said, details get left out. Maybe some gets left in because they're trying to scare a child before bedtime or something. Who knows?
Yeah, exactly. One of those things that it's very, very bizarre. And I have another one for you that is pretty gnarly too. 1959, the southeastern part of Louisiana. A 17-year-old boy is walking home through the woods one evening when he begins to hear strange, human like wolf screams coming from nearby and the sounds of something large crashing through the brush quickly towards him. Luckily for the teen, his house was nearby and he was able to make it quickly and what he thought was safely back inside. As he is making his way towards the house, he looks back in the direction and sees what looks to be a huge human like man wolf creature bolting towards him on two legs. Now, fearing for his life, the teen sprints towards his metal fence and slips right through it because he is able to, luckily, fit through. And as he pulls his bike through, he looks back. This creature is nowhere to be found.
Another one of those where it sounds like it's just out to scare the living crap out of him. It's doing it, you know? It's so many of those, you know. I mean, kudos to the boy for being able to scoot through the fence, but why go back for the bike?
Right. Valid question.
They get a new bike. I mean,
That's
you know,
very
maybe
valid.
mom and dad won't believe the Dogman took it, but still, I mean,
Isn't that the worst?
yeah, exactly. You know, nobody believes you.
Had that happen one time when people say, hey, the dog ate my homework. Well, my dog really did eat my homework once, but nobody believes you when you actually say that. I'm like, dude, I'm serious. I chewed my paper, my whole entire backpack. Yet, like you said, hey, must have had some sort of special connection with his good old bike right there. But that's another one, like you said, seemingly probably could have easily got him. Don't know why it didn't get him. Seems like it just wanted to, troll him or taunt him more or less. I'm not fully sure. I think it might have been Dennis Carroll that was speaking of this recently. Yet there's some versions of these type of creatures that really almost are like Freddy Krueger, meaning that they need your energy source of fear to actually really be able to power up and become more active. Makes me wonder if in these instances when these things are terrorizing people, are they just out of reach of becoming fully powered up and they still need to suck some of that good old fear out of people? Like in, Freddy vs. Jason, where, yes, it's a fictional movie, but Freddy had to have Jason do his bidding again to make people fear Freddy once again to get that power.
Yeah, there's so many of those that are just that. It's like they're just toying with them to get them afraid. You know, whether why bother messing with a doorknob? You know, when you could just pull the door off the hinges, or running your nails down the side of the house, or like that one report, you'll probably get the name right off the bat, where it's running alongside the guy's ATV and it actually starts to slow it down, and instead of just grabbing him out of the ATV, it looks over and smiles at him while it's slowing it down.
Covered that one here. That was in good old upstate New York.
I mean, that's the only thing that semi makes sense as to why they do that, is like they're getting a rush off of something. Obviously, they're not trying. You'd never hear it coming if they really wanted to, quote unquote, get you, because, they kind of pop out of nowhere and then disappear into nowhere, just enough to traumatize you.
That's what I'm saying, because you made some very valid points too. I've used this example before. William White, one of our scientists, his youngest child went into their camper, locked himself in. Obviously, William doesn't want his toddler running around in a locked RV by himself. Can't get the door unlocked. He just ripped it off. Literally bent it and ripped it and yanked it, pulled it off, okay? Again, William's a decent sized guy, and he's fit and stuff like that, but it's not like he's Superman and things, and he's smaller than you, meaning you would be able to do something as aggressive as that, as well as if you wanted to. It just doesn't really make sense to me unless they're trying to purposely do that, meaning they just don't have per se enough power yet to really be functionable. Is it really potentially there? Because I do know recently I've heard about some paranormal stuff where they can slam things and grab things and throw things, so they could still be opening or acting like I wanted to open your door. Meaning, in haunted houses, people report that all the time. You and Barb know way more about this than I. I'm just making a few little quick notes. Also, people have reported that they can leave tracks and things like that. Just makes me wonder, even if you're finding a track outside, per se, is it still not powerful enough to really, form into its natural being, I guess.
I never thought about it that way, but that, could explain a lot of times where, people are following the tracks from these things that all of a sudden they follow the trackway and they're just gone.
Mm-hmm.
There's no trees for them to jump in. There's no other, it's not rocky. They just literally stop and go nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's only powerful enough to leave those tracks and then as it fades away or whatever, there goes the rest of the prints because the weight isn't there.
That's what I'm saying, my friend. It's just a observation again. I mean, I'm not, saying this is what's occurring to anybody or etc. I'm just saying it's interesting because there is some sort of analytics and analysis pointing potentially in that direction with some things. So.
No, that's a valid point for sure, as far as I'm concerned. It sounds like it falls under the quantum mechanics into that, which is just way above my league. Get above addition and I'm in trouble.
No, definitely. It's something I'll have to forward on to my science team. I know that they'll be interested in hearing that. It's just one of those things, as I was talking with you right here, just popped up in the good old file cabinet. And I was like, wait a second. Or as my uncle always says, the good old hamster cage started churning.
Yeah, exactly.
My uncle, that's so brutal. He's the man, but it's like, yeah, let's say a compliment, but a backhanded compliment, is it not?
Yeah, just enough to keep you humble.
The good old hamster cage, right? Sometimes I feel like, my last brain cell is just gone, sitting in a canoe inside of my head, being like, hello, and it's just like, hello,
Yeah. My dad's favorite one was my brain was like a BB in a boxcar. It rolls the opposite way the train goes.
That's so funny. Absolutely brutal, but super funny. April 18th, 1998. The Ziegler Plant Nursery, Crowley. The Ziegler family is outside working on their nursery when the parents begin to hear their two young children crying wildly. Quickly turning around, the pair rushes in the direction of their upset children. To their dismay, they see an enormous, jet black, dog-like creature with extraordinarily long front limbs running on all fours as it easily jumps over the fence to their yard and dashes off into the forest. There's that strange quadrupedal and bipedal motion that we get reported to us a lot. And again, that is baboon like running. And also hyenas have much larger front legs than they do back legs too. Bizarre. What do you think, man?
I mean, people are definitely seeing something. There's too many similarities from all these different accounts that, I mean, who knows when people see and read, but the possibilities are, of course you want to know more. Did they, look for tracks? Was it, ape leg or canine or when they found them or, that was, I had a picture that I sent Aaron and one I hadn't shared, but, he inquired about Dogman and asked if I had seen it. And, I had one track that was to me questionable and I sent it to him. But at the same time, you looking for the evidence and not knowing, just seeing something and see it disappears. When they start adding up, you got to give some kind of credibility to it.
Mm-hmm.
People are seeing something. It's just defining what that something is.
I'm not saying I don't believe you saw something. All right, I do believe you saw something. I'm just wondering truly what it is you saw. And people get upset sometimes, not directly with me, but just with that type of concept. But that's legit how it is. Meaning there is a syndrome that humans do with everything. Meaning we always project human traits onto things that aren't meant to have those same traits, meaning look at what we do with our dogs and things. They put little party hats on their heads. Some people paint them pink. Also cats and other pets, even little people that have insects for pets, like some of those beetles and things. One girl painted them like all these cool colors, like pink, green, etc., like nail polish things. Moral of what I'm trying to say is we are very super guilty of trying to, when we understand things, always put human characteristic and traits to it. It's also why we always see human-like faces in the forest and shadows and things. It's just a part of our brain's evolutionary development. It is truthful and facts, meaning people do just need to understand some of these things are misidentifications. All right. Yes, people really did see something, but the question is, what did you see? I don't know how many times I have to use examples or tell people to look up examples of what stress does to people, or also how many different people, even if they're not necessarily stressed out, would have different descriptions about things. The analytics as well as the analysis is out there to prove this is a real thing. That's just something I think people need to pump the brakes on and understand that, yes, we agree, you did see something, but let's just be realistic for a second and figure out what it could be before jumping all the way over to the woo kind of side of things, you know?
Yeah, I mean, when people try to describe these things, it's just like you said, and to me, it's like when they put the human characteristics on it, you're talking about, seeing an elephant in the clouds. You're trying to
Yeah.
describe something that isn't necessarily that's what it looked like. You get that with Bigfoot all the time. It looked like a man in a suit.
Mm-hmm.
That's not necessarily what it is, but that's my frame of reference. You only have your memories and your knowledge and your experiences to draw upon. So in order to verbalize it, that's all you've got, because you haven't seen, certain things in order to describe them otherwise, to know what they are. Now we can say gorilla-like, with Bigfoot instead of human-like, or hyena-like instead of dog-like. And
Mm-hmm.
so it does make it difficult to try to uh, figure out and know for sure what happened in most of these encounters, unless you're lucky enough to get a picture or something like that.
Mm-hmm. You also touched base a little while ago too with people saying that it potentially looked primate-ish a little bit or baboonish. Those are just points of reference. Does it even necessarily fully look like that, or is that just the closest thing that we can comprehend at the moment to say it looks like, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I don't know the difference between different breeds of shepherd. I could just say German shepherd, and it could be who knows what. So it's just totally off frame of reference. Yeah, it looked baboon-like. I'm not saying it is a baboon, but that's what it looked like.
Again, too, I love how you say that because it's like those old school books and also even telescopes, the clouds in the sky, but in those old books where it's a bunch of dots, right? And you have to look at all these gazillion dots and supposedly it's showing you a picture. I never saw any pictures in that. I just saw a bunch of gazillion dots and colors everywhere. All right. Others would be able to see the picture of supposedly a fox's face or something. A telescope as well. If you look into it, to me, I just saw a bunch of glitter and little shapes everywhere, but other people would think it looked like some landscape, etc. Or when you're laying out in the backyard and your sidekick's like, oh, look at that. It looks like a unicorn in the clouds. And you're like, no, that just looks like clouds, but all right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm sure that's what happened back in ancient days too, where they didn't have words for things. It was just describing their point of reference, what they had to work with.
Again, excellent, because May Koo from our science team, who's our Spurlunker, had sent an image that was basically Egyptian, and it was explaining, yeah, a real creature that they actually saw, but again, they were putting the human characteristic type traits on it and then making it supernatural-ish because they didn't fully understand it, even though it did exist. They were putting a more glorified aspect on it, and I don't even know if purposely.
Yeah, that's and I'm guilty of it too, where the night that I saw my first Bigfoot, talked about the fact that, there was some rage. It looked like rage in its eyes. That's me putting a human emotion on it. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know for sure that it felt that. That's just what it felt like to me. And I'm putting human emotions on something that might not be capable of them.
Mm-hmm. Again, a cute observation. Makes me think of my squirrel per se. All right. She doesn't have much emotion with her eyes per se and things like that. It's body language, like when she perks up or chirps and things like that. Yet, if she didn't do any of that and would just per se stare at me, there is really no sort of facial reactions. I mean, she's not smiling per se like you and I do, you know?
Yeah, it's like my puppy. You can tell when he's inquisitive because he tilts his head. You
Mm-hmm.
can't tell it by the eyes. You can't tell that he's, really trying to analyze it. You can just see him tilt his head and try to figure things out.
Body language, exactly.
Yeah.
But if it was just like you said, the eyes per se, it doesn't really, show it. I mean, I do know people would be like, oh, well, that bear's eyes look like a pure apex predator. Well, yeah, it is an apex predator. I mean, what else did you think it was going to look like?
Yeah. Winnie the Pooh's going to come down to share some honey.
That's what I was saying. I mean, did you expect it to have nice little laid back looking eyes? No, of course it's going to look wild. It's a wild predator. I mean, it's obviously its eyes are going to look different than a mountain lions or hyenas or any of those. But if you put all those eyes beside each other, they all have that look of the predator.
Yeah, and they just look, dependent, and but that relates more to body language. Let's say head tilt and the way the eyes look at you. But like you said, if you just pull still pictures of their faces, you can't tell what's going on.
No, mountain lion's eyes always look like it wants to rip you apart. But like you said, until you see the body language and stuff, then you can be like, oh, okay, he seems more inquisitive at the moment and not so much aggressive. Same thing with like great white sharks, man. You can't tell by the eyes. It's the body language and things when it starts ramming something or it puts its head out of the water as it tries to process things. But if you were just to look at a great white, all of them look to seem like they have some smirk on their face, but they don't. It's just a natural setup of their mouth. A smirk is a human trait that we put on things,
Yep, exactly.
So we'll be like, oh, it looks like it's smirking. Well, yeah, because we smirk and things. So no, but the shark's not smirking. I don't really know enough about marine biology to make a good enough assumption on this, and assumptions aren't good. I do know sharks are really smart, but they don't necessarily seem to dwell in large family groups. So I don't know if there's a lot of natural things that would deter happiness and unhappiness, meaning as in whales and things, because they have more of the emotional aspects. They can be seen being happy and unhappy. I don't know if a shark is happy when it eats more food or it's just now, hey, I got my food and let's go get more. I don't know if it's unhappy if it doesn't. I could be very incorrect though.
Oh man, everything's happy when it eats. It's disappointed when it gets a hold of a surfboard by mistake. It's like it spits it out. Like, damn, there went my seal.
Right, in the energy expansion and stuff. No, it's totally really great stuff. Well, you are a super busy man, Mr. Barber. Is there anything else you would like to touch base on tonight before we do let you get back to other things you need to attend to?
No, I thought all the things we pointed out were good, and sometimes people need to hear again because you hear it once and maybe it sticks for a minute, but the second time you hear it about people putting like emotions on things that might not be capable of emotions, or when listening to somebody with an encounter, just because they say it was baboon like doesn't mean they think it was a baboon.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was spot on tonight.
Appreciate the kudos there. I mean, I always try to make sure we cover good stuff here on the Midnight Lycanthropy podcast. Get out important information, objective, subjective things that need to be looked at. As an investigative photojournalist, you got to play the devil's advocate sometimes as well and just present things that need to be looked at, because even if, per se, I'm not saying this is what I want. I'm just going to use this as an example. Even if I wanted a Dogman to look like something from the Howling and sound like the American Werewolf in London, because that's what I want. Well, when the evidence and things roll in and that's not what it supports, it's bad science and journalism to then still try to press your narrative, meaning even though everything is showing you that is incorrect. Yeah, that's how every hypothesis starts. You just then got to take in the information that will lead you in the proper directions, you know?
Yeah, exactly. You need to go in with an open mind, put your own opinion out, put your own agenda out, and look at things. If you take a thermal movie, it's a bear, but you're in Bigfoot country, and even though you kind of think it's a bear and you push it as Bigfoot, that's bad. You just crapped on the whole frickin' process.
That you did, my friend. Again, excellent stuff. Well, to the audience, we do need to allow Bigfoot's Barbershop to get back to things he does need to attend to. Yet he is a weekly host. You can catch him on our previous episodes in the good old playlist down below, or you can just click on the link in the description of the video and head on over to his thread. Or your final option is just wait for our new content to be churning out. Yet this will be the conclusion of the meeting for the Midnight Society in the early hours of the morning. Mr. Barber, thanks for kicking it with us again, man.
Oh, I always look forward to it and appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
Ooh, my creatures, I do adore every single one of you. And thank you for hanging out tonight. Please like, comment, subscribe, share the facts, feed the algorithm, and we will catch you very soon.